Welcome back to Close Up. Forget policy. One of the most difficult issues in Washington these days is finding common ground. The Reformers Caucus launched in 2015 and it has a goal of restoring trust in our government institutions. And two former U.S. representatives are in New Hampshire on that mission, and they join us this morning. Former Congressman Tim Romer, a Democrat, and former Congressman Zach Wamp, a Republican. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam.
So this is a difficult task you face under any circumstances, but obviously when Congress initiates an impeachment inquiry into the president, things get much more difficult. Congressman Wamp, from your perspective, how do you advance the cause of bipartisanship in this kind of environment?
Well, I think all day today we're going to be talking about how to take impeachment and put it in the historical perspective, the constitutional perspective, and remember that we're all still people, that we're all still Americans first, that frankly our country comes over our party, that you don't have to be part of one tribe or the other to respect each other, to recognize that we all have constitutional roles to carry out, and that at the end of the day we're going to be okay. We got to get through this together. And so again, it's still like a focus on country over party and respecting the individual. A lot of what's going wrong with Washington is that everything seems to be partisan, everything seems to be tribal. But the fact is the relationships among members, even today, is still pretty good. You just don't see it. You don't know it because publicly everybody's got to be part of this team or that team, and you got to blame the other team all the time instead of accepting responsibility collectively that we've got to move forward.
One of the key tenets of this caucus is effective enforcement, essentially holding elected officials and politicians accountable when they break the law. Are we there at that point, Congressman Romer, with President Trump?
No, we're not. Getting back to who we are at issue one, Zach and I, a Republican and a Democrat, are friends. We were friends in Congress. We worked together then. We think Congress can work together now to solve people's problems in New Hampshire and across the country. People in New Hampshire have an extraordinarily important role as an early primary state. We think that they should be asking these presidential candidates about how to increase enforcement, how to make sure that there's a sheriff on the beat, to make sure that when congressmen break the rules, when senators cheat, they should be held accountable. Right now, the Federal Election Commission, which is the sheriff, is broken. It's dysfunctional. It doesn't even meet oftentimes, and when it does, it tie breaks. You know, 2 votes here and 2 votes there, and they don't get anything done, just like Congress. So we at issue one, a group of 200 former members of Congress, senators, ambassadors, cabinet ministers, governors, have all come together as Democrats and Republicans, and we are proposing bipartisan solutions for law enforcement. We are proposing bipartisan solutions for dark money and too much money in politics. We are supporting bipartisan solutions for foreign entities trying to influence our elections, like the Russians and the Iranians and the Chinese trying to tell us who to vote for as Americans. That is unacceptable. So Zach and I are working together to do this, and we hope that people in New Hampshire will be talking to President Trump and Senator Warren and Joe Biden and asking them, what are you going to do to help our great republic work again for the average American people?
Not to belabor the impeachment point, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask your perspective, given the fact that both of you were on Capitol Hill the last time a president was impeached. Congressman Wamp, what were some of the mistakes that were made that this Congress can learn from potentially in the impeachment process?
Well, there's the political side and then there's the constitutional side. And there's no question this is a dicey decision politically for the Democrats to begin the inquiry. But the inquiry is just the very opening kind of salvo, the beginning of the process. It doesn't mean that there's going to be an impeachment, and certainly the Senate is way down the road if you ever even get through a House impeachment. So there's the political challenge, especially going into an election season right here. But then the constitutional side is, if you really believe there's a violation, if he broke the law, if he committed treason and you don't act, then you're not, fulfilling your constitutional responsibility. That's the needle and the thread that's a real difficult decision, and they've made the decision to begin the inquiry. More information is going to come out. They may actually back away at some point if the information doesn't validate going forward. So The country, though, I'm afraid, in this day of tribalism and blame, is just tuning it all out, because more and more, they don't even listen to our leadership. That's really what we're about, is to try to restore confidence in the institution. And once the confidence recovers, the American people will re-engage. Right now, they're checking out of all this.
What are some of the ethics changes, Congressman Roemer, that you'd like to see in Congress that might help, as President Trump campaigned on in 2016, drain the swamp?
Great point, Adam. Here is a real vulnerability, and I don't say this as a Democrat, for anybody who campaigns, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, and says, as one of their main pillars of running, let's clean up the swamp in Washington. And then they don't do much about it. In fact, the swamp is more populated with alligators and snakes and swamp creatures than ever before. We, as a bipartisan organization, both of us, are advocating with senators and congressmen up on Capitol Hill every day, how do we increase transparency on Capitol Hill so the average New Hampshire voter knows that it's not the lobbyist that is controlling things, it's not the big donor that's controlling things, it's the blue-collar worker, it's the farmer, it's the person that's watching your show right now that's worrying about their 2 kids going to college or health care costs. How do we restore, as Zach said, that trust in our system so that people believe in this great American experiment that the revolution started with over 200 years ago? And people don't trust that. So ethics, transparency, accountability in our government, restoring trust in the legislative branch so that when it takes on an impeachment issue, people will ultimately trust what Congress comes out with in this inquiry. The inquiry doesn't mean, and I just say to Zach, the inquiry doesn't mean they're going to recommend articles of impeachment.
Correct.
They're just going to look at whether or not the president violated this with his phone call with Zelensky and the Ukraine leader and did something that was treasonous or against the Constitution. Then they might recommend articles of impeachment. And finally, I'd say about impeachment, Zach and I have lived through this time period in the 90s. It is a very divisive time for our country, no matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. People start to separate into the respective tribes. And we cannot afford to have this be more divisive in our country. We got to solve problems in America today. I just got back from China. We got to take on China in an effective way. We got to rebuild roads and bridges. We got to do something about the deficit, the opioid crisis here in New Hampshire. Those are problems people want us to work on and solve. That's what Zach and I are talking about up here.
You mentioned the revolution, political divisions, all the way back to the Revolution of 1800. I think the Federalists burned down some buildings in Washington to avoid Jefferson getting his hands on documents. So nothing new under the sun, right? Congressman Watt, what's different about today's partisan divisions that we can't get around them?
Well, it seems like we can't get around them, but we're holding out hope that we still can get around them. And the 200 reformers actually are proof that you can actually get around them. And former members have the unique ability to actually tell the truth about everything because we don't have to worry about getting elected in the next election. And in Washington, everything runs in a 2-year cycle. And frankly, you got 24/7 news. Those are big differences today, to be honest with you, because when we weren't as a nation infatuated with politics all the time, things actually functioned a whole lot better. So those are big challenges that we face in the modern era, but there's still a goodwill among people to try to work together and to get things done. I want to go back. You said
an example of that, Zach, in your work on the Senate side to get Democrats and Republicans to work
on the
together.
election security issue this summer, we actually have brought Senate Republicans to a place of talking to Mitch McConnell about the need for election security. And what did he do last week? Change his position and authorize $250 million to go back for election security. That's a big change that we were part of. We had the Don't Mess With Us, the U.S. campaign this summer. Issue 1 drove it. The Reformers Caucus weighed in. And here we are with some changes. So you can bring about these changes. Yeah. But I will say, as a Republican, the one of 6 things that President Trump campaigned on that he hasn't addressed is the drain the swamp piece. And one of our most active members of our Reformers Caucus, Porter Goss, the former CIA director and House Intel chairman, says where there is no enforcement, there is no law. When you ask what we can do, number one, we have to have FEC enforcement. We have to enforce federal law. Today, there's this willingness to not enforce the law. And if you ever accept that, then the rule of law is no more, and where there is no enforcement, there is no law. So we are about enforcement, transparency, and accountability more than just about anything else, and we're doing it in a bipartisan way.
Congressman Romer, thank you so much for your perspective today. We certainly wish you luck in your efforts.
Thank you, Adam. Good to be with you.